Hi everyone, delonewolf here. Welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. Now, there's been little news in the last week or so, or ever since FanFest I should say, but it's quite alright. We do have a new dev blog, which is the latest economic report for March, so if you want to know more about the EVE economy, obviously go and take a look at that. I've yet to do it, but it's definitely on my to-do list. And of course, in around 2 weeks time, we'll have a release for May that promises all the new Blood Raider content. So I do look forward to everything that's coming up. It's, I guess, pretty normal that CCP is recovering a little bit from FanFest and then putting all their efforts towards getting the next release ready. We are here for the market, of course, and as always, we're going to start with Plex, 55 seconds. Let's go like that. And let's take a look at that. There is going to be a little bit of a discrepancy between this take of EVE Talk and the actual ticker. I made that one a little bit in advance because I still had some stuff to do. But I think it'll be alright because it's not that many plex that came in, down from 1 billion to 140 million ISK. So we can see on the chart here that basically we're getting a mirror image of the Ascension expansion with an increase in plex prices to well above 1.2 billion. 1.22 is here the top, and here we've got 1.22, 1.23 as the top, so it's very close. And again, I think that this is an indication that plex is extremely high at the moment. I'm going to try to sell a few more at this current trade range, and personally I still think that we're going to see a drop in the price of plex when the changes hit, which should also be on the May release, where basically one plex is going to be divided into 500 microplex. I still think that there's enough aurum sleeping out there that will get converted to microplex, that will see an increase in supply and thus a drop in the price. I personally don't really agree with the market at the moment that is going up substantially in price, especially now that we know that like 3 months later they're also going to convert all of the small balances of aurum into these new microplex, which is going to add even more supply to the game. So I can't really explain why it's so high, but personally I think it's a mistake, and I'm looking to sell at least part of my plex stocks. Not all of them, I do always like to keep some of them in reserve, but my expectation is that from the May release will start to decline. The summer should also decrease demand a little bit, so we should see an even further decline. And at that point I'm hoping to find a buy opportunity, let's say below 1 billion is where I'll start looking into purchases. So at the moment they're selling for 1.235 billion. In Cheetah, the buyers are almost at 1.2 billion, which is pretty damn significant. And if we look at the perimeter trade hub here, the plex go down to 1.207 billion, which is a decent amount down. A lot of that is very recent here as well. Look at that. A lot of those like less than an hour ago. And a substantial amount of sell orders, but not really in the volumes in perimeter right there. Whereas plex here are being sold towards 10 on one sell order. And the buyers in perimeter, basically no change. The best buyer there is actually in Jita 4.4 at the moment. So that's plex. Let's take a look at the multiple pilot training certificate. That one is obviously mirroring plex decently closely. Currently selling for 1.279 billion ISK, so it's even more expensive than a plex. Buyers are at 1.190, a little bit below plex, so this is a really wide margin, but of course you can see by the volumes that there just aren't enough of them, and the volumes are actually dropping quite substantially in trade volumes as well. I think people are just not gonna use the pilot trading certificate anymore. That one might actually die with the plex changes as well. Might just get converted to plex, then into microplex or something like that, because basically you can use that service, the service that it offers, through a plex as well. The pilot body resculpt next, up a little bit over the last week or so, but again, look at the volumes. It's maybe 1 or 2 that are getting traded a day. Here once again you can see we get some sell orders, but maybe 10 sell orders and that's it. The buyers are at 228 million. Most of that is probably just opportunistic stuff, expecting this to definitely be worth more than that, and it's just a a really small market that was disrupted by a huge Aurum sale, but now it's basically recovering and it's not really going anywhere fast. The skill extractors next, of course, a very close mirror image of the plex prices. We have the Ascension spike here as well, up to 290 million, currently 280, a little bit below the previous top, but getting pretty damn close to that. 283 million for the sellers, 274 million for the buyers of skill extractors. And again, supply, look at that, at least 1.5 full front pages. 40 here again, 105 here. So despite this really big supply, we're still seeing the price increase together with plex, which makes sense, of course. Should be bad news for the skill point farmers. Their margins should be decreasing unless skill injectors increase by the same amount or more. And it doesn't. It's actually flatlining here, but we must be honest here as well. It's stalling an increase in price that's basically at a 1-year high. So skill injectors currently going for 690 million, 693 if you want to take the first order where competition really starts. And the buyers are at 664 million ISK. It's pretty damn expensive. Where are the days where you could buy some of these skill injectors for like 500 million and things like that? Already gone. Skill injectors currently at a 1-year high, stalling a little bit, which means that the margins might be decreasing slightly for the skill farmers. But overall, I still feel like skill injectors are going to turn out to become one of the new stores of value, because it has both a plex purchase behind it, but also skill points, two things that are very highly valued in the game almost universally. And as a result, I do think that skill injectors might pick up the pace once plex are being cut into 500 smaller chunks as the go-to investment opportunity for basically an inflation hedge. Next up, we've got some minerals. That's at 715. Okay, and let's take a look at these, starting up with the titanium chart. You can see that the increase in price is definitely stalling. We're basically trading around the current trade range in the last 10 days or so. At the very tail end, we're even going down a little bit. Titanium currently selling for 4.52 ISK, buyers are at 4.44, and the bad news is 364 million, 225 million, 118 million, 223 million. On the buyer side, it's 30 million, 100 million, 8 million, here on 130 million, but it's pretty obvious that supply is winning out at the moment and thus putting some pressure on the price. It's true that titanium did really well in 2 steps to go back towards 5 ISK almost, never really getting there, but definitely above 4.5. And right now it looks like basically that it's a bit too good. Supply is coming back in full force and we are being pulled back down a little bit in price. When it comes to pyrite, it's a much flatter chart here at the tail end. We're basically finding our trade range, which is only a little bit above the bottom, not by that much, but close to 6 ISK, I think. Now 557 for the sellers, 549 for the buyers. The good news here is 1 billion units being bought, 500 million units being bought here. That gives us a little bit of room to breathe when it comes to falling prices, and as a result basically flat at the current trade range. It's still not great, but at least high-sec miners know that they'll get something, which is the current price for some of these high-sec minerals. Mexalon next, it's the one high-sec mineral that is of course doing a little bit of a different jump here, going up to 82 ISK, which is actually a really good price, even historically speaking, for Mexalon. The reason of course is that this is a bottleneck in nullsec, and it's still commanding a very decent premium, selling for 77.18 ISK, and the buyers are at 75.16 ISK. So the story is still the same. It's probably going to be the same for quite a while. If you do high-sec mining, then prioritize sources of Mexalon, because those will probably be going for better ISK per hour than stuff like feldspar, stuff like what is it called? Not exactly sure which one it is. It only has titanium and pyrite in it, but you know, just try to prioritize Mexalon sources at the moment. Isogen next here, very similar to the pyrite chart, basically trading flat at the current trade range, which would be Does it give more details? Doesn't show it all too well. 52.56 for the sellers, 49.26 for the buyers, so around 50 ISK, a little bit above that is the current trade range. Supply demand here 12 million, 6 million, 10 million. Then here we do have a good buyer of almost 100 million units of isogen. So this once again should help us stay somewhat more stable in the isogen market. Tritanium unfortunately looks like it's set to fall back a little bit. And next up we have Noxium. A lot of people consider that to be a high-sec mineral. I consider that to be an in-between mineral because you can't get it from every system in high-sec, which you can mine for titanium, pyrite, isogen and mexilon in any system pretty much, I think. Yeah, maybe isogen is the one exception there as well. But Noxium, I don't think high-sec is always the main source of Noxium supply. And we can also see that the chart looks quite different from the other high-sec minerals because we have a very clear bottom at 290 ISK here, but we gained back a lot of that ground, actually peaking at more than 400 ISK. So if you had bought at 290 and you managed to sell at 400, obviously that's a pretty good trade right there. Currently Noxium is selling for, let's disregard this one sell order here at 355. That's going to get picked up probably in no time. But 384.16 ISK for the sellers, 355.76 for the buyers. Basically, this guy could have just sold immediately to the buy orders, and he would actually have made more money than this seller right here, which also costs an extra tax, if I'm not mistaken. So that's actually, I think, going to be objectively a bad trade. You should have just put that to the buy order right here. But yeah, Noxium managing a much bigger comeback. Of course, an increasing price like that is caused to see a little bit of a pullback, and that's probably what we'll see in the upcoming days. But for now, Noxium holding strong towards 400 ISK, which in my opinion is pretty damn good news. Next up for the nullsec stuff, we've got Zydrine basically trading flat with a little bit of pressure to go below 1000 ISK apparently, 988 as an average. Yep, sellers 1001 ISK here, 10 million, 2 million, 1.7 million, 2.5 million. Buyers 964, 4.3 million, not bad. But basically, I do think that the buyers want to try and pull Zydrine below 1000 ISK. The question is, will the sellers actually be forced to do that? If they do, we could get Zydrine to a much lower price range, because then that would mean that buy orders get to be filled up pretty quickly once sellers start to go below 1000, and I think we could jump to like 935 pretty quickly, where I think Zydrine becomes interesting to start to buy. So that's basically what we need to keep an eye out for if we're looking to do some mineral trading. I would say look for the bottom to fall out of Zydrine, and a trigger could be sellers coming in at a price point below 1000 ISK. Next up here we've got Megasite, also a mineral that was actually doing surprisingly well in January, going back up towards 1500 ISK, but now it's basically inevitable. It looks like supplies from nullsec are still pretty strong. The Rorcal must not have been nerfed enough to really offset all the changes from before, and at the moment Megasite is basically going down in a pretty strange way, right? Because it does pull back quite often. 1, 2, 3, 4, if you count the small ones as well, 5 pullbacks by now in a matter of 3 months or something like that. It's quite strange to see these this mineral switch so much in direction, but the general trend is obviously down from around 1500 ISK to the current trade range of 1308 for the sellers and 1208 for the buyers. A very wide margin. This is probably what allows this price to fluctuate so much, because the sellers are dictating the price most of the time. But if all of a sudden on an increase in price we get a little bit of an oversupply situation, people will start to dump stocks to the buyers as well, and then you actually get a pretty sharp drop off all of a sudden. So yeah, the Megasite market is unfortunately seriously under pressure. The only one that I would say is still holding pretty strongly is Mexilon at the moment. We still have Morphite to take a look at, and that one is jumping up quite nicely actually. So if we look at the bottoms, we could have bought some Morphite for less than 9000 ISK. Here average almost 10,000 ISK. Sellers are 9,980, buyers 9,652. They are up already in a decently significant way, so a slight move up from Morphyte, but it is still below 10,000 ISK, which I don't think is all that great. I would personally still hold on to the Morphyte for a better sell opportunity, hopefully if we see a big Gnostic war or something like that. Moving on next to some PI at 1525. Let's take a look at these guys. We'll start with construction blocks, which was doing really well. The general picture in PI has actually been that it's in a very strong place at the moment with pretty high prices. So if you do actively do PI, I think it'll pay off to regularly bring stuff to the market at the moment. Construction blocks, for instance, very clearly just a couple of days ago still trading for 14,800 ISK, currently selling for 14,200, buyers are at 13,400, pretty wide margin, but if you look at the entire chart, 12.5k is usually the average for refined planetary materials. We're definitely well above average with pretty strong volumes at the moment on a slight upswing, so not bad, not a bad time to bring construction blocks to the market. Next up we have consumer electronics. Those are coming down, but look from where. 17,400 is a 1-year high just late last month, and of course at some point after you increase that much in just about a month, you have to give a little bit of ground back. Consumer electronics are still selling for 15,000 ISK though, and the buyers are at 14,652, which I think is still well above average as well. Coolants next. This one is a little bit different. We had a 1-year high at 16,000 ISK in February, but in the last 2 months we had to give back ground, and currently 12,000 ISK, probably around its average here. 11,900 first sell orders below 12,000 coming in, 11,900 for the buyers as well. So I think that we are currently actually looking at lower than average prices for coolants. If those sell orders actually get bought out, then I think we'll be back in a normal situation, but I would definitely understand if at this point you're not bringing your coolant to the market anymore, because I do think that dropping to 11-12k, which is what's happening at the moment, is quite dangerous. If this keeps up, we're actually going to go much lower right now. Right, if people actually see these sell orders as the seller value, they're going to start filling up these buy orders. Not that many to go down to 11,500 and even 10,000 ISK. So I think coolants will be interesting, but right now I would definitely understand if you're not trying to sell that one. Enriched uranium next though, that is definitely not bad, well above average, still 17,000 ISK here, so 1-year high and actually holding quite strong. 17,000 for the sellers, 16,800 for the buyers for enriched uranium. So just again mid-March we had a 1-year high, couple of days where it was trading for 20,000 ISK and actually still holding really well at the high trade range. Mechanical parts next. This one is quite interesting as well. Again, not that long ago we had a 1-year high mid-March at 15,800 ISK. At some point, of course, you do have to fall back a little bit, so we fell back to 12,000 ISK, but look at the jump back up, and mechanical parts could actually easily trade for 10,000-11,000 ISK on average, because it's so easily made from very common stuff on barren planets. But it's actually jumping back up here to above 14,000 ISK, 14,000 for the sellers, 14,000 for the buyers. So this is all narrowing, but at a price range once again well above average. Oxygen next. This is probably the one that's not doing so well. Less than 400 ISK on average, 400.60 for the sellers, 396 for the buyers. It's basically a lack of demand in oxygen at the moment, and this is of course one of the threats. At just not that long ago we actually did see oxygen trade for more than 500 ISK, but because it's only a processed PI material, it's very easy to make. I think basically too many people jumped on the occasion, and now there is so much stuff on the market that demand is drying up, and as a result here we're actually in pretty low price ranges for oxygen at the moment. I personally would not invest in this stuff because I feel that it's very difficult to actually trade at this trade range of more than 500 ISK, because it tends to get flooded very quickly with fresh supply, which is very easy to produce. Next up here we've got robotics, another pretty interesting one. Early March we peaked at 120,000 ISK. We dropped back to 110,000 ISK, which is still well above average. And here in the last week or so, we actually jumped back up significantly. 118,000 ISK for the sellers, 112,000 for the buyers. So robotics still well above average with pretty good volumes. If you have stocks of this lying around, you might want to start trading. Rocket fuel next. That is a little bit of a weird one, right? Should trade at around 12,000 ISK on a normal trade range. Jumps up in January and basically is still trying to trade at that trade range, but now at the tail end here we are falling back. Also notice this is one that has a very weird chart with the median daily prices all over the place. I can't really explain it all that well, but at the moment it's looking like we might just fall back towards an average trade range of 12,000 for rocket fuels. Still have a way to go though. 13,200 for the sellers, 13,000 for the buyers. Next up, self-harmonizing power cores. After a little bit of a jump up on the refinery announcement, now that we know that it's only in December, I think we're gonna be falling back a little bit. 2.1 million for the sellers, 2.1 million for the buyers as well. Very narrow margin. A decent buy order here of 2,000 units, but look at that, 405, 100, 414, 216, 119. I actually would not be surprised if even more supply comes in and will actually start to slowly go down in price once again. Superconductors next. Let's take a look at that. Well, we went pretty deep here, but still I would say alright. 11,900 ISK. Not the best price, but at least it's not too bad. And then we actually come back a little bit in the last month or so to 14,000 ISK. 13,400 for the sellers, 12,500 for the buyers. We're under pressure a little bit. I would say we are trading a little bit better than average for the sellers. The buyers are at around average, and still okay to sell your superconductors, but if you want to start building stocks, I would understand that as well. Test cultures next. This one is obviously currently trading at a pretty low trade range, currently selling for 8,775, buyers are at 8,140. Basically we are staying for a pretty prolonged period of time at these lower prices. I would constantly be out on the lookout for buy orders below 8,000 ISK. If you can snag up test cultures below that price range, you can see the potential here. 15,000 ISK is definitely possible, and I think building stocks this way is not bad. So you need to wait for some of these 8,000 plus buy orders to actually get filled up, which I think is possible with 265,000 units coming in here as the latest sell order. I think some people will just not be patient and go for the buyers, and as a result, if you can pick it up below 8,000 ISK, I would definitely look to make a move on that. Wetware mainframe here, as you can see, again still slowly under pressure. I think it's just going to continue as the summer rolls up. 2.4 million for the sellers, 2.3 million for the buyers. Not that much demand at the moment. I think any new supply is going to put more pressure on this price right here. So PI, general picture is a lot of them are doing really well, holding at very strong trade range. There are a couple of exceptions, and of course the structure related ones I think are going to keep being under pressure until the winter. I would look for maybe a good purchase opportunity somewhere late summer, and then try to get ready for the winter expansion with the new structures. After PI we've got Dequan chips, that's at 24 minutes. Okay, and this is probably not going to do a lot with minerals hesitating at best on the high-sec minerals, and then the null-sec ones going down. The Abaddon clearly still trading pretty low at the moment, selling for 160 million, bars 151, and hardly any movement in the last 24 hours or so. Caracal next. Anything interesting here? No, not really. You know, minerals are so low, so are Tick 1 ships, and we can clearly see that the Caracal is basically trading at the current trade range of 9.7 million for the sellers, 8.8 for the buyers. Caracals for less than 10 million is actually pretty damn cheap. The Coveter next, that one is jumping up a little bit in price, 28 million. It's trying to make a bit of a comeback. Sellers at 29 million. Okay, not bad, at least it is trying, but again, even 29 million is well below the average price of below the Ascension expansion. Still, there's a bit of a comeback in the Coveter here, narrowing the losses. Hurricane next, obviously also still trading down on the 1 year basis, currently going for 48 million for the sellers, 44.3 million for the buyers. I still think that is actually a pretty respectable price for a battle cruiser here. So I again feel like, just like the Coveter, that actually came back from a really low price range of 21 million. The Hurricane is doing decently well despite the current mineral prices. The Maelstrom though, that's obviously quite a ways down here from normal trade range. 180-200 million is definitely possible. Currently selling for 168.5 million, buyers 134 million. Again, showing the lack of interest in this market. Volumes are pretty abysmal as well. The Megatron next, going up in price a little bit. That's quite nice, up to 170 million. Really, are we selling? Yeah, Megatron's 178 million. Not that much supply. Buyers are at 156.5. So as a result, actually, the Megatron making a bit of a comeback and selling at least at currently selling at prices that are around the pre-Ascension prices. Now the peaks are still quite a bit higher here, up to 200 million, but there's a bit of hope for the Megatron. It's basically a lack of supply though. I would not be surprised that by next week we're going back down, as it's one of the only battleships that'll probably be trading at a decent margin at the moment. Next up, we've got the Prophecy. Also obviously here the Ascension expansion right here, and then the current trade range well below that. We tried to crawl out of that last month, but we're back basically trading Prophecies for 50 million, 46 million for the buyers. Pretty damn cheap once again. Scorpion next, trying to go up in price a little bit, but again here it's basically a December cutoff point, which is the Ascension expansion. 170, 175 probably before that. Currently Scorpions 151 million, so still trading well below the price, up a little bit, but just look at that, there's maybe 24 Scorpions on the market at the moment. Demand isn't there, supply isn't there, and it doesn't matter, the prices just aren't up, and it's just not the right time to be building a lot of Tech 1 stuff at the moment, or to be bringing Tech 1 stuff to the market, I should say. Here's the Vexor, a little bit of a blip because of course the announced Vexor graphics changes, but I don't think it lost that long, back below 10 million last week, and now 10.2 million for the sellers, 9.5 million for the buyers. So there's a bit of fluctuation, but it is still definitely trading below the pre-Ascension prices. So yeah, Tech 1 still under pressure, lack of demand, lack of interest, lack of meta. It's just not the right time to bring that stuff to the market. Building up stocks of cheaper ships at the moment could be a good idea, but again, I think it could remain pretty tricky unless something really drastic happens, like a major nerf to the Tech 3 ships, which I personally don't think is going to happen. I think it's going to be a little nerf, which might bring some battleships back to the forefront, but it's really still very difficult to say what's going to happen with the Tech 1 market. Tech 2 next, 2845. Let's take a look at these ships and see if there's any actual movement. The Ares dropping off to less than 20 million, buyers 19.6 million. If you're looking to make a trade investment that could fluctuate very quickly on just the opening salvos of a war, look at these interceptors here. I think the Ares is buying Ares for less than 20 million could be very interesting at the moment. The Claw next, also slowly going down here, average price 20.4 million, buyers 19.2 million. Definitely another one that I think you might want to build a few reserves in. I have a few Claws myself already. The Crow next, up in price a little bit, up to 25.6 million. Here we have, let's say 22.5. Yeah, there is decent amount here apparently, 23 million, 26 million for the seller. So this one, unless you have some very cheap crows lying around, which I don't think you do, it's quite a flattered chart, I think, because it's a much more popular one, because it has missiles, if I'm not mistaken. Let's take a look at the show info, and then the fittings. Yeah, it actually has launchers, which I think is just very popular in general, and as a result it's a bit more stable. So Ares Claw yes, Crow no, unless maybe you're looking to sell. You might be able to get a decent price from very lucky purchases. The Ares next, slowly going back towards trading at a normal trade range of just below 50 million. 50 million for the sellers, 41.1 for the buyers. So obviously if you have bought some of these really cheap 37 million ISK Ares in March, then February, March, then you should look to sell them, bring those to the market now. The Flycatcher next, also slowly going up in price. So again, I don't really like this at the moment. We're in between the previous peak and the rest of the chart, so I would say nope on the Flycatcher, unfortunately. The Heretic, this is definitely a bit more interesting, right? You can see here starting at a high point of 58.3 million, going down to 43.9 million, back up to 59 million, and now we're going back down at 49 already. The question is, will we have enough momentum to break 45 million? 46 on the buyers already. It just takes maybe 25, 26 of them, and then we're back at below 45 million. It could happen on enough supply, which makes for an interesting chart when it comes to actually trading. Still too early to buy Heretics, but look out if this momentum continues. Next up, we've got the Hound actually working right after a high point, went up to 26.5 million, maybe even a bit higher than that. Yeah, 27 million, and is already dropping back down. So sellers are at 21.4 million, buyers are at 19 million, and apparently we missed out a little bit on a sell opportunity up to 27 million. But yeah, buying for, what is it here, 19 million, selling for 26 is obviously pretty good, but very tricky to time here. It was very short-lived. Next up, we've got the Malediction, an interceptor that's also pretty flat at the moment, I would say. Can we get below 20 million? Nope, 20.3 for the buyers, 22.5 for the sellers. Too much of an in-between wave happening here, so I don't like this one. Manticore, oh, look at that. That's what we want to see in the Tech 2 markets. So not that long ago, 23 million, a couple of buy opportunities, back up to 33.8 million for the sellers right here. But if you had bought these at 23 million, obviously you want to bring those to the market. 25 million for the buyers, though it's not gonna last very long, but okay, Tech 2 market alive here in the stealth bombers. Great sell opportunity for the Manticore. Nemesis next, also up a little bit, so there must have been some purchasing happening. 20 million, I think you could have bought for less than 20 million. You still can at 19 million, 23, so this is too timid. I would in fact still look to buy Nemesis if you're looking for that Tech 2 investment. But okay, Manticore really good, Nemesis not enough. Purifier next. Basically, after holding on to 25 million for a long time, I think we're going back down a little bit. 25 million for the sellers, 20.3 for the buyers. Still, I would like to buy them below 20 million. So honestly, not yet. Let's hope that this can actually drop off. And finally, we have the Saber, also going pretty low, up a little bit, but from what price range? Let's take a look here. 54.5 for the sellers, 48 for the buyers. So you're buying Sabers below 50 million, which is here on the chart. Definitely not that bad in my opinion. So obviously, if you can sell your Manticores for a profit, do so now. If you're looking for the investment, I would look at the Saber, I would look at the Ares, and I would look at the Claw. Next up, Tech 3, 34 million. 34 minutes. As we get longer into EVE talk, my mouth dries up a little bit and it gets a bit harder, but let's continue here. As always, we'll start with the Tech 3 destroyers. Confessors going up in price, currently selling for 33 million, 30.2 for the buyers, so up a little bit from the previous really low bottom at 27 million. So it's still there. It's still oversupplied. Let's be honest. There's still hundreds of them coming to the market, but it's slowly going up in price as well. So hopefully we'll start going through all of these stocks, and hopefully at some point we'll have an opportunity, maybe a few fleets being bought, and then get a good sell opportunity, like what we had with the Hecate in mid-March here. Hecate currently selling for 35 million. Buyers are at 32.8 million. Honestly, if you're looking to trade in these tactical destroyers, I think you're too late. What you have to do now is you have to have reserves that you bought here at this 29 million, 27 million confessors, 29 million, or even lower than that. What is it here? 27 million jackdaws. This is where you should have bought, of course, and you should still have some of these lying around if that's the trade you're looking to make. But I would not be buying anymore at this point. 35 million for some jackdaws. And then finally we've got the Zwepel, which you could have bought at also 27 million. It's currently selling for 35 million. You know, that starts to be a little bit interesting. I'm still hoping for a bit more volatility, but if you want to take a bit of profit on your Zwepels that you bought at 27, I can understand that. Still, hopefully this is a start of some volatility and slightly higher prices in the tactical destroyers. It's still gonna be pretty tough though. Hundreds of them right here, hundreds of them here, 180 here. Hecate is the one that could be primed for it, the fastest, and then again hundreds of them in the confessor market as well. Well oversupplied, but up from the bottoms where you should really have bought. I think it was for weeks on end that we could just straight up buy dozens of them for 27 or 28 or 29 million, and I bought a little bit in all of them, and you really should have done the same if this is the opportunity or a ship that you wanted to have an opportunity on. Right now I would say don't look into buying anymore, because it's gonna be really tricky with hundreds of these still coming to the market. Next up, we've got the cruisers. Legion still under pressure. That is obviously not good news. 123.5 for the sellers, 113 million for the buyers. Here again, if you're looking to do the Tech 3 cruiser gamble, you should be looking at buy orders now, but I'm staying well clear of that. I still think that nerf bat is gonna hit the... Whenever there is talk of the changes to the Tech 3 cruisers, what always drops is that they are still taking up niches from other ships, and I think CCP is going to try to counter that. You're seeing Legion fleets, you're seeing tactical advanced cruiser, Tech 3 cruiser fleets rather than battleships. Why? Because they can tank so much better than battleships. I still think that they're gonna be hit pretty hard. I could be wrong on that, and then this is an incredible gamble to make at the moment, but it just feels a bit too risky for me. Loki next selling for 114.8, buyers 108 million, really cheap. Proteus also 1 year low at the moment, 123 million for the sellers, 114 for the buyers. And finally the Tango basically flat, up just a little bit, but flat at a very low price range as well, 127.4 for the sellers, 118 for the buyers. So Tech 3 market oversupplied in general, and then the Tech 3 cruisers, it's a really big gamble to take. And I'm not gonna do it, but yeah, there is of course this change announced by CCP. We don't know what it is yet. It could be something that we don't expect that will really drive interest all of a sudden. It could also be the nerf bat, and that would be pretty bad as well. So we'll have to wait and see on that, of course. And we're moving on to the extra material, which is going to be, I chose faction cruisers and faction frigates because it was pretty interesting there. So 39 minutes. Let's put that down, and I want to cover this because I actually made a trade on it. I'd prepared a video for last week, but some other stuff came in between that. So let's talk about this now, and let's take a look at this. So faction, Navy faction is what I mean, of course. And here is the Augur Navy issue. So going up in price substantially, but the really interesting one is right here, Caracal Navy issue. So I actually bought some pretty low at less than 50 million ISK, and we can see now here that they are up to 62 million, sellers are at 64 million, buyers are at 58 million, and I bought a couple here and sold them at this higher trade range. Then here we've got the Executor Navy issue actually going down in price, and the Fixer Navy issue. Look at that drop off in the Fixer Navy issue, back down to less than 70 million. Sellers at 70 million, buyers are at 63 million ISK. And the reason that I want to make a separate video on that, so I'll just cover that here, is sometimes people do ask me tips when it comes to investments and things like that. I generally don't do that. I don't like to give people advice. The only real advice I can give you if you want to do trading in EVE Online is you have to put in the hours, you have to put in a lot of time to successfully trade, just trying to have one-offs or trying to get those quick returns is generally a very bad idea. But the one exception that I think won't require much more time in the market to actively trade in would be these Navy faction ships, because they are so heavily tied to faction warfare. So here now we have pretty cheap fixors, 63 million on the buy orders, and we know that this is because the Galente have been winning out. They've been getting better bonuses for their loyalty points, and as a result apparently the Fixor Navy issue is super popular to go after right away, and as a result we have this sharp drop in price. The Caldari faction warfare, we saw that from FanFest, I think. 90 systems captures, the best faction warfare result out there. They were at really low prices where I bought some of these Caracal Navy issues, and now what was the trigger to make this trade was the first signs on Reddit that Galente militia was actually starting to fight back, had hired mercs to take care of some citadels that the Caldari were using, and thus as a result it was very likely that they would fight back, conquer back some space, get better bonuses, dig into the bonuses of the Caldari, and as a result of course their LP goes down and their prices go up. So this is a predictable market in the sense that all it needs is taking a look at what's happening in faction warfare to spot the buy opportunities at the low prices when they're really winning out, when they're in the highest tier, and then timing the sell opportunities. All it really takes is knowing that the other side is starting to push back a little bit, and that is when you know that you might be able to have a trade in the near future. So yeah, the Ogre Navy issue here up in price a little bit, but not that much. But the Caracal Navy issue, as I've said here, was definitely a good trade to make. Here is the Executor Navy issue, of course, more Galente LP crashed the price down, so here was a great sell opportunity, and we had buy opportunities at less than 50 million. Here is the Omen, nope, this is the Omen Navy issue. So apparently I would read from this, I've not stayed up to date too well on the Amar Minmatar situation, but apparently here I would say that the Minmatar are winning out a little bit and the Amar are losing ground because their Omen Navy issue is up in price substantially. Here is the Osprey, was also very trade worthy, so buying opportunity 47 million, 70 million at the peak, currently selling for 67 million, and this is faction warfare related, not spend more time in the market, which makes it the one place I would look for in investments without having too much market knowledge, basically. Here's the side fleet issue, Minmatar going down in price, obviously the Minmatar winning out. We would like to see less than 45 million for a buy opportunity, or we'd like to see them in tier 5 and then look at a buy opportunity. But again here, right now they're in between, of course, but they've been apparently winning against TMR. Stabber also down a little bit, and then of course the Vexor, that really sharp drop. I almost think that buying some Vexor Navy issues at 63 million, if the Caldari decide to push back, will be a good thing to do. So I would still let this ride out, but then keep an eye on what's happening with the Caldari. Whenever they start to make a comeback, that's when you should look at buying some Vexor Navy issues and then getting that trade cashed in. And I did the same with some Caldari frigates, so we'll quickly check on those as well. Here's the Caldari Navy hook build. The chart is pretty bad, but here again you can see the jump up. I bought them for less than 10 million and then I traded them for 14 or something like that. I'm not sure what the current here, 13 to 14 million, currently selling for 13.7 million right there. Again, this was actually a predictable trade to make just by keeping up on Reddit and a little bit of knowing what's happening in faction warfare. Here's the Federation Navy Comet. Again, here Calente winning out, more LP. This one is going down substantially. Imperial Navy Slicer, Amar losing out a little bit, so up in price a little bit. Republic Firetail finally going down in price, was selling really well for a long time. Crucifier Navy issue, Amar going up. Griffin up, but already cresting, so this is quite interesting. You know, if having a few characters in faction warfare could be really great to just be on the ball with this. Here's the Maulus Navy issue going down in price, and then the Vigil is apparently not all that popular in general. But yeah, this is the one thing. If you're looking for a tip basically on where to invest in, or where can you make money without needing to spend too much time in the market itself, without learning and filling in your own spreadsheet and things like that, I think it would be Navy faction ships. Not all of them, of course. This Vigil fleet issue doesn't feel that interesting, but very popular ships like the Navy Comet, the Hookbill, and then the cruisers, you've got the Vexor, you've got the Caracal. Those are definitely ships to look into if you want to do some active trading without spending every day in the market. If you want other tips, you know, then that's really not my area of expertise. If you want to tell me, well, buy this or sell that or do things like that, that's not what I'm going to do. That's also not what I'm aiming for with Eve Talk. But yeah, if you're looking to basically get started in trading or have something that is going to be a bit more certain, then it's basically keep an eye on faction warfare, look into the Navy faction ships, and that's what I wanted to cover as the extra product. So that's it for this Eve Talk, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.